Unit 8, Lifting and Moving Residents. So there are many types of transfers that can be used when you're moving a resident, and you need to think about some certain factors when you are doing a transfer. You need to think about the size of the resident or the patient that you're moving, what their ability is. Are they able to help you, or are they not able to help at all? What is their condition? What is their ability to follow directions, their cognitive function? Can they understand what you're telling them to do? What equipment is available? Are you using a lift of some kind? Are you using any kind of transfer aids? So we need to think about all of these things. So activity is good medicine. Why is it important? What are some of the complications of bed rest? We've talked about immobility in the last unit and how not moving can cause bed sores. But what else can happen from a person laying in bed all the time? They could possibly get depressed. They might end up with pneumonia from not moving. So their joints might not work as well, so a limited range of motion. There's a lot of negative things that can happen with immobility. So we want them to move. Blood clots are another example. A thrombus is a stationary blood clot, and that's usually found in the calf of the leg. It's sometimes called a DVT. And so that can be, the calf can become swollen, or it can be warm to touch. These are signs that we would look for. And this happens from not getting up and walking. Embolus is a moving blood clot, and that can become lodged in the heart. It can be lodged in the brain. It can be lodged in the lungs. And all of these can be fatal and cause issues. We talked about pneumonia, loss of muscle strength, contractures, and poor circulation. All of those things are effects of immobility. So this is a picture of a geriatric chair, and that is for a person who is not able to sit in a wheelchair. It gets them up and out of the bed, but it gives support to the head and neck. If you put a table across the geri chair, it becomes a restraint. So oftentimes there won't be a table on there. This is a picture showing you a proper technique for helping a resident to sit up or to move to a sitting position. This is showing you how you can move a resident up in the bed with a draw sheet. And you can see the sheet under them. They're rolling that up to the resident, and then they're going to pull the resident up using the draw sheet. This is turning the resident away from you. So this is similar to that lateral position that you guys have already done and shown me. Log rolling. Log rolling keeps the body in alignment. So you put the pillow in between the legs and you move them all at one time. This is something that would take two people, and using that sheet underneath them. Dangling. This is helping a person to sit on the side of the bed. You want them to dangle for a little bit before you have them stand, and this will help them, their blood pressure to regulate, help them to be able to stand up without getting dizzy. Transferring to a chair with a gait belt. So anytime you do a transfer, you want to use that gait belt because it helps to give you something to grab a hold of. It helps to keep them safe during a transfer. So this is showing you use with the gait belt compared to use with not. Which she doesn't have the gait belt here, she wouldn't have anything to really hold on to help her to transfer. Okay, we've already talked about proper lateral position, but you'll want to take a look at that again just to review. Dangling, if you are dangling somebody, check for dizziness, stay with them at all times. If they feel dizzy, have them lie down again. Know the term orthostatic hypotension, or it can also be called postural hypotension. And hypo means low or below, and so that's where the tension is talking about blood pressure. So it's where the blood pressure drops when they change position. So when they go from a lying to a sitting position or a sitting to a standing position, the blood pressure becomes low. The gait belt, you want to start practicing with that gait belt. It's going to be really important that you know how to properly use it. When you use it, it should not be directly on their skin. It should be over their clothing, below the rib cage, but above the waist. When you put it on, you should be able to kind of slide 3 fingers or your hand flat behind it, but it shouldn't be super loose. So it needs to be tight enough that it's not going to slide up under their armpits, but not so tight that it cuts off their breathing. Make sure that the breasts don't get caught in the belt. Sometimes you'll have to ask them to hold their breasts up so that you can get it on properly, and make sure that the buckle of the belt is over to the side, not right where their belly button is, but kind of off center. Anytime you're walking somebody, you need to think about, or transferring them, think about safety. So they always need to have non-skid footwear on, whether it be the socks with the little grippers on the bottom or some kind of a shoe that has a rubber sole. You don't want them to have those slick house slippers on because they could fall. Anytime they're standing, they need to have that. When you're using a wheelchair, make sure that you remove the wheelchair footrests, and because they can like get caught up and fall on those. So when you're transferring them in and out of the wheelchair, get those out of the way. Just take them off, and then you can put them back on. The wheelchair should be near as close to the head or the foot of the bed as possible. When you're doing the transfer, you want them to be able to just basically stand, pivot, and sit down. When you're doing this, you need it the wheelchair should be on the strong side of the person. So if I'm sitting on the bed and my strong side is toward the head of the bed, that's the side where the wheelchair should be sitting. So that when I stand up and turn, I'm able to use my strong side to move toward that chair. And then make sure you're locking those wheelchair wheels and lock the bed wheels so as you're transferring, things don't slide out of place. This slide talks about different proper placement when sitting in the wheelchair. So make sure, if they have an affected arm, it's supported. Make sure that they have their hips to the back of the chair, and their feet either need to be touching the floor or on the footrests. And this is just kind of showing you positioning when you're taking them to the toilet with a wheelchair. You may not always be able to have it perfect, but you can just kind of bring that right up to where they can use the grab bar and do some transferring. Another possible transfer you might do is transferring a person to a stretcher. So this can take multiple people. You have the draw sheet underneath, and you do a count of 3 and pull over and they come on, or you might have like a backboard that you can also use. Or there's also something called a hover mat, and there's some facilities that use this, and basically there's an air mattress underneath them, and it has some straps on it. And so when they get ready to transfer, that inflates, they pull them over, and then it deflates. And so it's a very easy way that it doesn't hurt the employee's back, and it doesn't hurt the resident or hurt their skin as they're being transferred. When you're moving a stretcher, make sure that safety straps are used. Make sure that the side rails are up when you're moving them or transporting them. A stretcher is always moved feet first, and the staff member stays up at the head so they can monitor breathing and color of the resident. Never leave a person alone on a stretcher. Mechanical lift is another transfer that you will be learning to do and checking off on. There should always be 2 people when you are using a mechanical lift. Know the weight limits of your lift and always follow all safety precautions. There are different types of walking aids that you may come across when you're helping a resident to ambulate or walk, and that could be like a cane or a walker of some sort. And the walking aid's really going to depend on what the person's condition is, how much support that they need, their type of disability. Learning about crutches, you can find that on page 448 in your textbook. Canes, they help with weakness on one side of the body. You can have a 4-point cane, which is called a quad cane, or a single tip cane. And the cane is always held on the strong side of the body, so that's good to know. Walker is a 4-point walking aid, and it gives more support than a cane. There's lots of different types of walkers. You have some that they pick up and move, some that have wheels, some with baskets and seats and all kinds of stuff. And then just remember, anytime you're doing any transfers, you want to think about safety. Always use good body mechanics. You don't want to hurt your back, so you're going to have to bend with your knees. Use the large muscles of your legs when you're transferring. Make sure you're talking to them. Don't twist. Think about your center of gravity. Get help when needed. Make sure that you've identified that resident correctly. And always work together. So move on that count of 3. Let them know what you're doing before you do it, because they oftentimes can help you.